You ever watch a man hook a luxury SUV to a John Deere and drag it into a muddy creek while the sheriff stands there filming 2 days after she started parking like she owned our gate? That's exactly what happened, and I still hear the splash in my sleep. It was a Thursday morning when I first saw the white SUV planted square across the Thompson Ranch gate like a monument to entitlement sun glinting off chrome clipboard lady, leaning on the hood as if the gravel belonged to her. My name is Ethan. My grandpa Hank Thompson has lived on this property since before I was born. Silver Creek cuts through our land, the fence is our speech to the world, stay out unless invited. I remember the smell of diesel and dew, the hay truck due in 20 minutes, and the ridiculousness of a woman in heels deciding calmly to make my morning impossible. "You're blocking a public access road," she said, all clipped and corporate. "This is private property," I said, trying to be polite because that's what my grandpa taught me when trouble came hands, visible, voice, steady. She clicked her tongue, took pictures of our mailbox, our gate, Grandpa's old Ford, and told us Pine Creek Development had a new survey showing this corridor public. She introduced herself, Karen Bennett, Regional Director, and smiled the kind of smile that smells like lotion and lawsuits. Grandpa did not smile back. He tipped his hat and said simple, "You parked on Thompson land, ma'am." She left, saying, "You'll be hearing from my office." The dust from her tires was still settling when Grandpa muttered, quiet and sure, "That ain't a mistake. That's a test." For the first week it was petty car at the gate, an hour here, 2 hours there, annoying but survivable, missed deliveries. Drivers cursing me filming everything because Emily Carter, our lawyer friend, the one who keeps a rule book in her glove compartment, told me to gather evidence. Then she escalated. She would come back at odd hours, sometimes just idling with the engine running, sometimes backing hard through the soft new drainage trench we'd dug to protect the lower pasture. Once in the middle of a small spring rain, she drove right through the fresh dirt we'd just turned. Tires spun the bank, caved water ran brown and chunky where it had run clear minutes before. I stood on the porch and watched mud chip away like someone scratching a line through our land. That's when I first felt something dark settle in my chest, not just anger, but a creeping, stupid doubt. What if the county had actually changed the line? What if our papers were worthless in a world that worships new overlays and neat, glossy maps? I lay awake nights thinking about selling, about getting out of the mess, about how easy it would be to stop answering the door. I felt small, foolish, like a relic clinging to a fence no one wants to buy. There's a low, poisonous voice that shows up in moments like that and asks whether you're the problem. I heard it loud enough to almost listen. Then Grandpa opened the rusty workshop and pulled out a wooden chest wrapped in oilcloth and decades of dust. Inside were the kind of documents you don't see on a scanner, notarized surveys from 1950. The original hydrographic record with a blue-inked line labeled Silver Creek Signatures County stamps that had started to look like fossils. He laid the map flat on the workbench and traced the creek with a finger that knew every bend. Emily came that night in from town, and when she saw the paper she stopped breathing for a second. "This," she said, "is primary evidence." She scanned, she photocopied, she filed. We did the boring, lawful things that don't feel dramatic, certified mail-recorded complaints, a formal trespass, and property damage notice, but we also did an absurdly simple thing to protect ourselves on the front lines. We put up a legal notice at the gate. Big letters legible even to people who think laws are suggestions. Private property, abandoned vehicles will be removed after 72 hours. TX Property Code 683. We logged times, photographed positions, and asked Sheriff Morales to witness. Slow, methodical like stacking stones, so a wall shows up the next day. Karen treated it like a game. She'd take videos, laugh into the phone about community access and progress. She'd lean against the SUV and act as though the camera made her right. The thing is, people who live by swagger sometimes forget that swagger runs on proof. When she left that SUV at our gate for 72 hours straight, she didn't get clever. She got compliant with her own arrogance. Grandpa kept the notebook. Every entry was inked precise. April 19th, 9:14 a.m. Vehicle obstructing gate. April 20th, 3:14 p.m. Vehicle still obstructing gate. April 22nd, 9:15 a.m. 72 hours complete. I remember standing there with him, rain-smudging ink, and feeling a calm settle into his shoulders that I hadn't seen before. We'd moved from anger to a plan. Then the weather did her thing. A storm rolled through, turned Silver Creek into something mean and proud, and the SUV, already sitting in clay and water, began to sink into the earth like all the arrogance it represented. Sheriff Morales came with his deputy and a county tow truck trailing all professional and careful he knew his job, and ours verify the log witness the procedure. Karen called and hollered and threatened. "You'll be arrested," she said through the rain. "You can't touch my car." She was soaking and furious, a cartoon of entitlement. Grandpa hooked a heavy chain to the SUV's rear axle and looked at me like we were about to do a chore we'd done 1,000 times, steady work, no drama. "Easy, now," he said. I sat on that tractor green, loud, stubborn, and thought about giving up again. In the second before the engine coughed and pulled, a little voice whispered to me, "Don't ruin your grandpa's life for a car. What if we get sued? What if we're wrong?" Then I saw Emily standing under a sagging umbrella, holding the scanned maps. Sheriff Morales holding the notebook and the past old ink and notary stamps, staring back at me with a calm that felt like iron. We had done the paperwork, we had witnesses, and we had the terrible moral clarity that comes when someone is deliberately harming your land. So I put the tractor in low, eased into the pull, and felt the chain sing. The SUV lurched, moaned, and in the space between a wet, stuck sound and the next heartbeat, it slid toward the edge. Karen screamed and called names and promises. Sheriff Morales kept his hand steady on his clipboard. The tractor slowed. Grandpa nodded. We went again, slow controlled, and the rear of that SUV tipped. Mud gave way with a sound that seemed to breathe. It was loud enough that even her yelling cut out. The front dipped, the white hood shone a second, and then Silver Creek swallowed it. Water rose brown and ravenous. The splash knocked rain from the air, and for a heartbeat, everything was just the storm and the sound of water. There was no cheering from us, no triumphant whoop. There was wet silence, and the sheriff's recorder clicking, and Emily with her hands on the map like a person crossing a line in a courtroom. Later that day, Sheriff Morales handed Grandpa a folder. Timestamps, photos, his statement, full compliance with state property code, the paper read. The county opened a probe into Pine Creek Development's maps. Karen Bennett's boss suspended her pending investigation. The county attorney wanted copies of our originals. I won't pretend it fixed everything. The creek still needed fixing, the trench still needed repair, and the stress had cost us time and sleep. But the moment the SUV went under and the sheriff nodded at our notebook, something true happened. The false map that tried to rewrite a life met the real paper that had always been there. I felt relief, not triumph, a tired, sober relief, and a quiet understanding that fighting is not always loud. Sometimes it's patient, small, and legal, and sometimes it involves a tractor and a chain. The vehicle sank. Her office called lawyers. The county opened files. That's where the story stops for me, right at the sinking with the law catching up and her claims unraveling. Proof matters.